Annie Parker joins us from her day job as the Global Head of Startups at Microsoft. Annie is also one of the co-founders of Techfugees. We invited Annie here today because we wanted someone from Sydney but outside the Python community to share about how she's been using technology to help improve people's lives. And with that, I want to welcome Annie Parker.
Thank you for that welcome, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning and share a beautiful Saturday with you. As Katie said, I have a day job, but the day job isn't what I'm here to talk about today. What I get really passionate about is when we realize just how much technology has the impact and the possibility and the potential to change people's lives for good. So I'm going to talk to you about a program that we started here in Australia about 3.5 years ago called Techfugees. And as the name suggests, it's all about how technology can improve and support newly arrived refugees here in Australia. Before I go through that though, I just want to give you some of the hard facts. And I know these are depressing for a Saturday morning, but they're important that we all understand why this is important for us to encourage ourselves to get involved in these communities. We have the highest levels of displacement on record in the world ever. 68.5 million people around the world have been forced from their home. And among them, 25 million of those refugees, of those 68.5 million, I should say, are refugees. And over half of them are kids under the age of 18. So if you just consider what that means, we have so many people who are displaced from their home, from everything that they remember, whether it's school, their families, their friends, what they do for fun, all of that has changed. All of that has been taken away from them. And nearly one person is forcibly displaced every 2 seconds. Isn't that insane? It's a frightening set of statistics. However, I have some good news. There are ways that we can all contribute and get involved and try and help support these wonderful people when they come to our great country. And Techfugees was born in London, actually by a friend of mine called Mike Butcher, who's the editor-at-large for TechCrunch across Europe. He was sat there in his home, watching Twitter, watching social media, watching the news 4 years ago, going, holy crap, this is frightening. What can technology do to help them? There's got to be something that we can do to contribute. Techfugees was born. I had moved here 5 years ago, so I was sat there watching Mike's Twitter feed as he was trying to encourage and cajole and communicate with his local tech community to see whether they could pull together a hackathon. And I was jealous because I was sat there going, I wish I could contribute. And I thought, well, sod it then. I'll see if we can put on our own. And I can't tell you, after one tweet of asking for help, 6 weeks later, we ran our first hackathon in Liverpool, where I met Jack. And Jack has been one of the most involved tech mentors that we've had at every single event that we've held ever since. So what we've done so far is 5 hackathons completed in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide. Sydney's the most active, but if you do have friends or if you're from further afield and you'd love to host one, we would love to help you do that. We've got our 6th hackathon planned for the 24th and 25th of November here in Blacktown. And the reason why we do it in places like Liverpool and Parramatta and Blacktown is that's where the refugees actually are in their communities. That's where they are settled by NGOs here in Sydney and obviously across the states in Australia. They typically are put into places where there's plenty of space for them, that there are plenty of amenities and hospitals and services to support them. So we always host our hackathons where refugees already are. And we co-design our hackathons with NGOs and with communities to see what are the right solutions for us to be, or what are the right problem sets for us to be focusing on that will make a difference if we brought together really great minds across the tech and startup community for 2 days. How can we put that to the best use? So that co-design approach is now something that all other Techfugees chapters globally use as well. We also run regular meetup events. They're typically sponsored by other companies like those I mentioned there. So again, if there are other companies out there that would love to host and sponsor a meetup, please come and let me know, because the more meetups we run, the more people that we can encourage to get involved to see how they can help. And obviously, it helps us to build that engaged and impactful community across the country. But the so what for me is more than just bringing nice people together so they can help each other. We actually do get to significantly change things. We've had companies created, who I'll talk a little bit about them shortly. It's about creating connections to potential customers, to investors, and genuinely one of our startups who carried on building their company post one of our hackathons met their next investor in an Uber on their way home from the hack. Jobs are created and found. One of the folks who came to our very first hackathon to brief in a problem that he felt as a refugee was that his skills as an engineer were no longer recognized, despite the fact that he'd graduated from university in Syria. His skills were not recognized here in Australia, so he has to go back to university to requalify. Somebody in the room at that hackathon knew somebody in admissions at the University of Western Sydney and got him a scholarship. Instead of him having to take another year or two to get requalified, it took him 3 months. So sometimes the connections that get made aren't just about the tech and the hack itself. It's about the wonderful people in the community helping and seeing how they can make a difference. The community impact. This is about helping newly arrived refugees realize that they're not refugees anymore, they're new Australians. It's important that we understand that. They're Australians, they have a right to be here, they have the visas. So we need to find a way to help them feel comfortable. And by hosting these wonderful meetup events and community events and hackathons, it gives these newly arrived Australians an opportunity to see how they can meet people who are like them, who have the same interests. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is using these opportunities and stories to change the national narrative. I don't know about you, but I am bored and oftentimes really quite upset by the narrative that we hear in media that refugees are here to take our jobs, or that they're taking money out of the economy because of social services, or that perhaps they're a South Sudanese refugee and they're out on the streets in Melbourne and nobody can feel safe going out for a dinner anymore, which is all utter bullshit. And we know that, right? These stories that come out of our meetups, our community events, and our hackathons help to change that national narrative. And it's important for us to continue to share those stories post the hackathons as well, so that we get to show the good that's happening, because it's overwhelmingly true that there is more good being brought by these wonderful new communities and cultures and people. It makes our country absolutely fantastic, and we should be welcoming them, not the other way around. And of course, it provides inspiration for other newly arrived refugees to think that they can do this too. All right, so some case studies for you. Refugee Talent, they came to our first ever hackathon. Refugee Talent was formed by Nereri Dacho and Anna Robson. Anna used to work actually in Nauru, so with detained refugees. And Nereri came to Australia from Syria as a qualified engineer, but could not find a job for love nor money. People didn't believe that he had the skills he had on his CV. It's easy, it felt like a risk for an employer here in Australia to take on a former refugee. So he solved his own problem. They built a platform which helps to connect newly arrived refugees to jobs here in Australia. And what they do is they de-risk it for the employer by creating internships, paid for internships, where a newly arrived refugee or migrant can prove that they have the skills they have. And then at the end of their internship, the employer gives them a full-time role. And as you can see from the stats, they've been enormously successful, placed well over 150 refugees and migrants into jobs now, with 500 businesses on their platform and 2,500 candidates. They've recently just expanded to New Zealand, and they're also working on a world-first pilot, working with companies like Microsoft to be able to pilot a system in a refugee camp to see whether or not they can find a person with the right skills and then sponsor their visa to come to Australia as well. And that will be, like I say, a world first. One step, this one is possibly the simplest idea that you can ever think of. Founded at our second hackathon in Parramatta, and all it is an app telling you when the next walk they're going to do around a nice scenic part of Sydney to encourage newly arrived refugees to have a nice walk and to meet some of their new local friends and family in Australia. It's that simple. They've run 4 walks now with another 2 or 3 in the plans. Their next one is actually tomorrow. So if you fancy a walk around Manly and fancy meeting some newly arrived refugees and telling them your story and welcoming them to the new country, you are very welcome to join. If you go onto the One Step Walks site, you can see the Eventbrite link for that and register. And they're doing a load of corporate walks as well with CommBank, Hotels Combined, and they've got MOUs in place with 2 migrant resource centres, also looking at partnerships with OzHarvest and Qantas. Muralisto actually won our hackathon in Parramatta a couple of years ago. And what I love about this is it proves that it doesn't always have to be a pure technology solution for something to provide a connection and be useful to newly arrived refugees. This is about co-designing community artworks. So in Parramatta and in lots of different parts of Western Sydney, they've been working with local communities to pull together murals and pieces of art that describe some of the stories that our newly arrived refugees have, and they work with local artists to bring them to life. They've done 16 so far, 2 more coming in Rockdale soon, and they've just been accepted to the FYA program for the Pioneers program, which is fantastic. And then the cool part about this is even though this is a very basic website connecting newly arrived refugees with artists who can help co-design artwork, they're also now looking at how they can bring in things like virtual reality so that they can share these newly created pieces of artwork back with their friends and family from where they came from as well. Okay, I am going to bring up my guest for this talk, the wonderful Shakaiq Rezai, who I met only about 10 months ago at our last hackathon, which was in Fairfield, right?
Yes.
Come on, join me on the stage, Shakaiq. Please welcome Shakaiq, everybody. So, first off, Shakaiq, please could you tell everybody where you are from originally and how you came to Australia?
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak. And oh my God, there's so many of you guys. I was sitting over there, I didn't realize. Well, hello everyone. My name is Shakaiq Rezai and I am from Afghanistan. I came to Australia in 2013 and I was living as a refugee in Iran all my life almost, and then came to Australia under a migrant visa.
And what was it like for you coming to Australia? What were some of the kind of things that you weren't expecting, or that scared you, or that made you uncomfortable? What's it like to move from one country and everything that you've known and come to Australia?
Oh, Annie, I could write a book on that.
I think you probably should.
Yes. It was actually completely different to where I come from. And the thing is that I was actually raised in Iran, so there wasn't so much war there, but there's a lot of discrimination, especially against people who are Hazara and Afghan, basically, because we're refugees. But I came to Australia, everybody was so nice and accepting, because back then in Iran, even as an Afghan refugee, if you walk on the street, people like point out you, oh my God, look at that, she's an Afghan, okay? I'm serious, not even exaggerating. But then in Australia, it was just like really nice and accepting. I could freely just walk by myself, and it was very nice.
And you came to the hackathon last year. How did you find out about it?
Oh yeah, I found out about the hackathon through an NGO, which is SSI, and they sent me an email. They said there's a tech event, you could, find solutions to refugee problems. And I was always been a refugee, so I wanted to attend that. And I came to the hackathon, so yeah, that's how it was.
And have you been in tech before? Had you got any skills, any background in technology?
Zero. I tell you, I come from Iran, no. And as a girl, it's very difficult to actually do things or, take part in initiatives. So no, I didn't have any.
What did your parents think of you coming along to something like that?
They're like, oh, okay, you're just going to go waste time. Okay, I know. Because I do go to a lot of events, but yes. However, a lot of good things came out of it.
So talk to us about that. What's changed since last year?
So our team actually came second in the hackathon. We had an idea of a artificial intelligence AI, which was to help track moods. Because when people come to Australia, after a while they go into this state of like kind of sadness and depression. So that was to track their moods and like prevent that state to happen. And we came second. We got a scholarship to $3,500 scholarship to do like a course at Academy XI. And my team members were all Australian, super nice, so they gave me the scholarship. And I did a user experience design course at Academy XI. And through the skills that I gained at Academy XI, I started my own startup.
Come on. So Shakik's going to do a 60-second pitch in a second, but one of the things I just wanted to flag, so in the photographs, so on the far left-hand side, that's sort of her winning the second prize, then going and graduating in February 2018 from Academy XI. She's pitching her startup in the middle there at Fishburners on one of their Friday night pitches. And then at one of our meetups, we had the CTO of The Iconic, a wonderful lady called Zoe Ghani. And you had a little bit of a starstruck moment, didn't you?
Yeah, because she's also from Afghanistan, and I was just like, oh my gosh, she's so cool. And the fact that is for Afghan girls, they're not really always encouraged to take higher stances, like becoming a CTO or CEO. However, she was a CTO, and I was like, I'm so inspired. Okay, I was just excited, like, literally for like 1 week to meet her. And yeah, that's our selfie, and that's our director team, by the way.
And what's really awesome about this for me is 2 or 3 things. Firstly, that hackathon was in October last year. Look at how much Shakik's life has changed just from having that capability and opportunity to meet people. The fact that she's pitching a business and working alongside and meeting with people like the CTO of The Iconic. Shakik, can you tell everybody in the room how old you are, please?
18, okay.
So she's year 12, about to go do her HSCs. How awesome is she? All right. Okay. 60 seconds, pitch your startup.
Oh my God, okay. Can I just say something? Actually, when I was at the hackathon, that was my first time ever being on the stage, like first time ever like pitching a business. And I didn't pitch because I was so bad. And okay, you learn, come on, don't judge. But I had like only about 30 seconds on the stage. But then, you see the picture at the Fishburners, that was 5 minutes pitch by myself. So you see, like, I did come from a long way.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to pitch for you guys, my 60-second pitch. So, imagine you're migrating to a new country in search of a new home. You're full of hope, joy, and aspirations. But only when you arrive, you realize that you don't speak the language, don't know the culture, you don't have a job or anyone that could help you. And you're basically trapped at home because of these small problems that could be easily solved. And that is the problem with solving a director, which is an online platform that facilitates easy and efficient access to governmental and non-governmental settlement programs, workshops, and services provided by the government and non-governmental platforms that prospective clients are not aware of it. And our vision is to actually enable migrants and refugees find their full potential and access all the programs that exist out there so they can help themselves. Like, for example, myself, I knew about the hackathon because somebody told me, but there's so many other people that would be interested, however, they had no idea because they didn't have a contact in the NGO. So that's the problem we're solving, Director. I'm looking for web developers, office co-working spaces. That would be really lovely. And thank you so much. If you could help me, that would be really nice.
Wonderful. Well done. All right. Stay where you are. I'm just going to wrap up before we open up to Q&A in the room, and Shakik's going to stay on stage with me just in case you have questions for her. But just a quick reminder, if you are interested in getting involved, that next hackathon is at the end of November in Blacktown. We do need a venue, so if you know anybody, let me know. The rest of the other things are the obvious stuff around the usual meetup things. But again, if you do want to get involved in meetups and helping out, that would be great. And I think that's pretty much it from me. I would love for you to all get involved if you can, even if it's just spreading the message. If you follow us on Twitter, we're at Techfugees AU1, I think, which isn't the easiest of handles in the world, but there you go. Please do get involved, share the love, and share the stories, if nothing else. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you all this morning, and I would love for you to ask us any questions you might have. All right.
I think we got our first question here.
I'm from Melbourne, so I'm just curious about the easiest way for me to find out how to get involved in the hackathons down there.
Cool. So with Melbourne, so our lead over in Melbourne is a guy called Frank Arrigo. He's a crazy developer, awesome person. I can connect you with him. If you can either drop me a DM. My DMs are open on Twitter, by the way. Drop me a DM. We'll sort that out. Frank is trying to organize the next one, probably for early next year. Sweet. One volunteer already. Yay. Any more questions?
There's a second mic over here if anybody wants to raise a question. I will throw one in just while we're waiting for people to get their thoughts. What sort of skills are you looking for from people who are coming from the tech community? Are you looking for back-end, front-end? What are you looking for?
Honestly, one of the things that's probably the most important to take from this is the technology that is really needed, or the skills that are required, isn't really deep tech stuff. This is providing probably existing technology, but putting it into a place where it's not actually being put before. So realistically, what we're looking for most, and we've split the communities up into 4 different groups, rather than the usual hacker, hipster, hustler, we've created a 4th one, which is humanitarian. So oftentimes it's what we've got in the room, and typically at our hackathons, 70% of the attendees are first timers. So actually what they need most help on is how to pull together, a really early stage prototype or an MVP, and knowing what else is already out there that they can use. So it's all of the back end, front end, but it's quite high level stuff. So you don't have to be like the most deep skilled engineer in the world. But obviously that's great too, because the more capability we have in the room, obviously the further those ideas can go. Alrighty, I think we might be done unless anybody else has got a question.
Well, if you're shy, maybe come after. We can.
Hold on,
speak
there's a
to
question in
this.
the back.
Oh, we found one. There we go.
Hello. What are some of the most exciting projects to come out of hackathons that haven't turned up into your case studies that you've seen on there? Like, what are some really exciting projects that happened in there?
Gosh, there's so many. We've had everything from an Airbnb for refugees right through to Shakaik's product that she mentioned from the hack itself, which was around supporting refugees with mental health and helping them make sure that they feel safe and that people are taking care of them. And that was there's another one that was quite similar that was a bot to do the same thing. Honestly, we look at such a broad thing. And, another one was welcome tables. So this was the idea of pulling together communities once or twice a month, and they would cook food from their home and share it with others. And as we all know, that it's the human thing to break bread and share stories. So to have that common link of food and sharing your passion for food and community into your local communities as well. There's so many. I could keep going for days. We've had 4 hackathons here just in Sydney alone, and there's at least probably 8 to 10 ideas that come out of each one. I wish we could give them all the opportunity to fly and flourish. In fact, the team that won last year was a lady from a hospital who found that quite a lot of the people, particularly from Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq, their elderly family members had absolutely 0 English. So what they were trying to do is to build an app that helped them navigate around a hospital to find the right place for them to go to see the doctor that they needed, or the nurse, or the ward that they needed, because they were just getting super lost. So you'd be surprised at how simple some of the solutions need to be, but actually how impactful they are when they're done well.
There's one over there and there.
One more here.
To the front, I'll come to you.
It's really obvious how the project is helping individuals. How is the project helping to push back against that bigger bullshit narrative that you mentioned right at the start?
Look, so we've taken quite a lot of opportunities with national media, local media. We'll take any media that wants to cover the story and try to pull across this broader narrative. The truth is, though, if you want to change something at a systemic level, you need to come at it from both ends. Great to try and get some of these stories on national TV, which we have done, and refugee talent, for example, we're on SBS. We've been on the ABC national news 2 or 3 times. We've been covered in most of the national newspapers too, which is good. But what actually needs to change is at a community level as well, is kind of that grassroots for us all to recognize that, you know, there are these wonderful stories, and actually all it takes is for each of us just to help a little bit, and it's those little bits that all add up. So it's a bit of both. And look, the work that some of the NGOs do, we mentioned SSI, so that's Settlement Services International. They're the NGO here in New South Wales that do phenomenal work to support newly arrived refugees and to help them settle in their new communities. And there are NGOs like that in every state in Australia. I think we should all kind of look to see what we can do to support them, to, you know, sort of multiply and amplify the work that they do. They do phenomenal work, so I would encourage you to see how you can help them too.
Also, I could answer that question. You know, when you said it helps individual, it does. For example, it really did help me to kind of like, you know, find my way for the future and what I want to do. However, it also is changing kind of the perspective of the community, because when I go to these many tech events, you know, people actually are, most of them are people that never seen a refugee or a migrant, and them seeing me is kind of like changes their perspective. And I've got that a lot, you know, they say, oh my God, you're the first person I see a refugee, you changed my like actual view on refugees. So it kind of does change it like that as well.
Yeah, hello. So for us, maybe people in richer countries, it's pretty much a given that we're using smartphones and computers and everything, but I'm assuming that some of the refugees you're getting, maybe they're not as technology literate when they show up to the hackathons. So I was wondering if you have some processes in place to make these people more aware of like what's possible on a phone, what's possible on a computer.
So do you want to start that one?
Actually, that's a stereotype, sorry. Yes, it's 2018. Okay, I know, you know, you might just think maybe because Afghanistan is a war-torn country or Syria is a war-torn country, no one has ever seen a phone or a computer. However, that's completely wrong, okay? Although I wasn't completely into Python or, you know, coding or C++, I knew how to use a computer or how to use a phone. So that is something actually everybody thinks, like, you know, the refugees don't have phones or they don't have like computers. But the thing is, when they come here, okay, they always want to like contact back home, so they always get a phone or a computer. So yes,
it's interesting. It's the part that I think we all need to kind of challenge our own unconscious biases or stereotypes. The overwhelming majority of refugees that I've met through this process have extraordinary skills, whether that be in engineering, education, healthcare, you know, across the spectrum, yet every single one of them has a phone. Every single one of them has an email address. Every single one of them knows how to navigate the internet. Sure, as Shakik says, you know, deep technology knowledge around a specific language or back end or front end. But look how far she's come on learning that in 9 months. So I would encourage you all to consider this sort of concept of, why would you think that they don't have those things? They come from a country where they've been economically prosperous for many years. War is not great, obviously, and that's what's put people in places like Syria and Afghanistan in these places, or in these situations. But they still have extraordinary education systems behind them and skills that they already have. So yeah, don't underestimate. Probably one other stat for you as well. Nearly 50% of the businesses here in Australia, small businesses, medium businesses, over 50% of them were started by a refugee or a migrant.
get that.
Yeah. One more in the middle, I think.
There was that one and that one. Okay.
You were talking about the NGOs that are being involved, and I know that there's been a number of kind of social hackathons that are focused on their challenges. Is there plans within the Techfugees to, because it seems like it's a co-design process by who's in the room comes up with the project. Do the NGOs ever come with projects that they're looking for support around that you then run through the program?
Absolutely. So we actually start the planning process for the hackathon around 3 months before. We work with SSI, we've worked with Red Cross, a number of different other organisations across the country. They work with their case leaders, case managers, and newly arrived refugees, also looking at the data as well, and then to kind of go, okay, so these are the themes that we should be looking at, and then we give those themes to people who've registered for the hackathon, usually about 6 to 8 weeks before the hack as well, so that people can start to consider what ideas might be useful. The other thing that we do as well, and this is probably the part, it's oftentimes the technology and the problem solving is great, obviously, because that's the nature and the purpose of a hack. But what we're trying to do as well is to encourage refugees to come in and brief those problems directly to that community, this new community of potentially tech people and founders who've never set foot or spent any time with a refugee before. And the power of doing that is so that they understand who their customer is. So Shake came in to brief one of the problems last year, and then we encouraged her to stay for the whole weekend, and she did. And that's usually what happens. The refugees that come in that we find through Settlement Services International come in and share their stories, and then they feel so welcome and feel like there's opportunity to try and solve them that they end up staying around and become part of the teams that design and deliver those solutions as well, which is super awesome. And that absolutely was the case for refugee talent. Narari came in and briefed the problem that he was facing, found a solution over the course of the weekend, and then became CTO of his own company, which is kind of awesome, right?
Another question over here.
Come on, this side of the room. We need to get questions going this side.
Hi, I'm a co-organiser of the Python Adelaide Tech Meetup. Is there anything we can do to help reach out into refugee communities and be more open and inclusive to help bring refugees to our meetups?
Really awesome question, and this actually this answer goes to any other underrepresented group. In fact, I was actually at a Microsoft MVPs event last night, and I'm not going to lie, the room was full of men. Not one woman, not one person of colour, no one disabled, nothing. And the question came up was, how do we get a more diverse audience? I said, have you invited them? Honestly, it's that simple. I'm wearing my equality t-shirt today for a couple of reasons. The first is, it's the only one that was clean. The second is, we have a ridiculous new prime minister who voted against same-sex marriage, and that's bullshit. But when we changed, I was Fishburner's CEO earlier this year, and we changed the logo to rainbow in order to show our support for same-sex marriage. And the amount of the LGBTIQ community who came up to me afterwards and said, thank you for doing that. I now feel welcome. It's not that they didn't feel unwelcome, it's that they now felt like that they were part of that community. So my suggestion would be, go speak to those NGOs, go to places where refugees are, and you'll know where they are, by the way, because it's usually around food. Western Sydney, amazing communities with awesome different foods and restaurants, and go and speak to them in their local community centres, go to local libraries and ask whether or not they have groups who already meet, and go in and invite them. The part that I've often found as well is if you make that extra effort to go to where these communities already are and say to them you are welcome, I will guarantee you they'll turn up.
Yes, and also I can add on to that. There's a lot of sort of services and NGOs that have a lot of refugees coming to them, and they're looking to be engaged more in the Australian life. basically meaning people of that been living in Australia for more than them, right? So you can contact me. I can get you in touch with the right person. You can speak to them.
And there's a community leader for Techfugees in Adelaide as well. So again, DM's open. Drop me a message. I can introduce you to her. She's called Janine Malcolm, and she's amazing. All right. Oh no, we got one more at the back.
Awesome. Lucky last, maybe. So question for Shakay, actually.
That was very good pronunciation.
I'm doing my best. What excites you about the future of technology? Like, you're young, you're getting into it, you're doing cool stuff, but what gets you excited about the future of tech?
Well, that's a really good question. It's very hard to answer, but I'll try my best. So what excites me the most is the fact that I'll be able to help other people through technology and through my own startup, because I started in the first place to help people, because that was a problem I faced when I came to Australia. What happened was that I came to Australia for 2 years. I was like just going to school and coming back, didn't do anything else. And then I found about this program that was for refugees. And then through that program, I found so many other programs. And I felt so bad because I felt like I was missing out. All these 2 years I could have done so much things, but I didn't get to because I didn't know about the programs. And then I was thinking, if there was a place, for a directory that I could just go and find out all the programs that was for myself, that would be really good. So what really excites me that I can help people through that, and that's the whole thing about it. Helping other people, that's my mission in life.
Yeah. Are we done? All right, I think unless there are any more questions, thank you once again. Please do get involved if you can. Please thank Shakik for coming to spend some time with you this morning. And of course, have a fabulous PyCon, enjoy yourselves, and yeah, keep doing awesome things.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on. Photo.
By the way, connect with me on LinkedIn, okay?